7th grade, I smoked my first joint. I still hold the title of the first felon of the Christian high school, breaking into homes, some celebrity homes, stealing nothing, but just for the rush of seeing if I could get in there and do it. I lived entirely for what could I get from this moment? Since prison, when I surrendered to Christ, he wrecked me for life without him. He transformed so much of my inner heart that all I wanted to do with the rest of my life was tell people about him.
Let's start at childhood. I know, actually, I don't even know if I know for sure where you grew up. Like, I know some of the cities you've lived in, but where were you born? Where did you grow up?
Well, born in Fresno, California. And then we hopped around a bit in Northern California. But then really, the important part of my childhood that I really want to point out is when we lived here in Southern California. This would have been about 72, 73, 74, that time. And I'm beginning elementary school, second grade, third grade, fourth grade. The thing that was transformational during that time when we were down here in Southern California is that my mom, she was always a believer. She was raised in the church, but it didn't really grip her until the early 70s when she got caught up in the whole Jesus movement of that time. So she really did. She got radically transformed by Christ in the early 70s.
Hmm.
She was one of those people in living rooms singing Kumbaya with 15 hippies, on the floor with the guitar. And the fish started showing up on our car, and we drove around doing the one-way sign to everybody. That's why I love the movie that just came out, The Jesus Revolution, because it just hit home. I was born in that, that's
Hmm.
kind of where I was born, and life changed. Life changed in the Randolph household, and we
So,
were raised in that movement. Yeah.
so when I know a little bit about that movement. I have a hunch some listeners like me don't know that much about it, though.
It was the hippie culture, and it was a bunch of marginalized youth living on the fringes, um, trying to find purpose and meaning, and as that one line in the movie that they say they were trying to find God just through, you know, all different venues, through drugs, through LSD, through promiscuous sex, through everything. And then it was the rise of like Calvary Chapel, Chuck Smith and Calvary Chapel, that came out of that. And then eventually also, Vineyard and others. And they're still, like Greg Laurie, he's still crushing it. And he was a part of that thing too. So it was a legitimate movement, not just in Southern California, but across the nation, where God was targeting people who would have otherwise been left out, the broken, the lame, the outcast. He was gathering them in. And thankfully, there was some moms and dads of faith that worked with the Holy Spirit to give these young people a place to belong and experience community. And so, gosh, it was phenomenal. I told you I wept through most of that movie because that was when the Randolph household changed, and that's when Christ became a part of our daily existence. Whether that was, geez, watching the 700 Club every morning, it was on the TV, and getting the little Bible verses out of the little loaf of bread thing and reading those before we went to school, whether we liked to or not, going to church quite a bit, a lot. We moved back up to Northern California. Church was a big part of the Randolph household and in my life in terms of, going to church. And I I I I don't have bad memories. Everybody's got these bad memories of the religious, institutions that they were raised in. No, not I don't. We went to church, when youth groups and stuff like that. I never gave myself to it, you know. I
Yeah.
never I never gave myself to it. I probably said the sinner's prayer dozens of times, but it never became a real thing in my life during my childhood, except, the summer camp experiences, right? Where you and 300 other kids are snot crying down at the altar. But it wasn't. I was a squirrel. I was kind of a rascal, a squirrel. So I mean, seventh grade, I smoked my first joint with some friends. I was very athletic, and yet I also like to party. I'm seventh grade. I remember one of the first times I walked over to the place where the stoners would hang out, and they were like, "Randolph, what are you doing over here? The sports guys are over there. You don't belong with us." And I did, and that was so innocent. It's funny that I remember that because I never did feel like I belonged anywhere.
Mm.
You know, I had my crew,
Yeah.
and I was also very immature for a young person, in the true sense of the word. I had not developed
Hmm.
just mentally or emotionally. I never thought in terms of uh, consequence, like, oh, this is a bad choice to make because this is going to happen.
Mm.
I lived entirely, and this is really even through high school too. I lived entirely for what could I get from this moment.
Yeah.
And I mean, I threw away scholarship opportunities. I threw away a bunch of stuff in life during my school days of junior high and high school, just because I'd rather party in the moment, or I'd rather take off and go with friends here than show up at the tryouts, or do whatever. Just, you know, I'll
Mhm.
I'll cheat on that report card, even though I know I'll get busted on Monday. That gives me 2 days to party. You know, yeah, just I was drunk during high school, a lot of high school. You know, I went to a private Christian high school for a few years in Walnut Creek, Northern California.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
And I still hold the title of the first felon of the Christian high school. That would be me.
Well, I can't wait to dive into that. What what was, what like, how much of this were your parents aware of? Like, were they, because I know, like, a lot of times it's like parents know like 10% of what's going on, with kids sometimes. But I'm just
Yeah.
curious what that was like in your household, because you come from this, um you said that all after you moved from Southern California, the Jesus movement, it's a part of your household. The Randolph household is a Jesus household. What was that like, for your parents? How much were they aware of? How did they handle that with you?
Oh, they were aware of probably 30%, but the 30% was uh, alarming enough that like after junior high school, instead of me going to the public high school along with my older brother Mike, they they found a private school to put me in, just with hopes that this would corral this young kid, and keep him from stuff, but it didn't. Meanwhile, my mom is running, she's the president of Women's Aglow, like a Bible study that's a national thing. She had her chapter in our area. And so she's teaching and discipling and doing all of this stuff. And meanwhile, she's got a son who's, just off the rails. And I wasn't a mean kid, or, you know,
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question. It was like, was it just like party type behavior, or was it, yeah, or were you like, um
yeah.
yeah,
And
how did
and
that, yeah,
thrill seeking. I
thrill
didn't want
seeking?
to. I did
I like,
not want to live a normal life. I mean, I remember later on in life, the high school days, or about 17, breaking into homes, some celebrity homes, stealing nothing, but just for the rush of seeing if I could, you just get in there and do it. So things
yeah,
like
okay,
that.
yeah,
You
you
know,
were thrill seeking. I actually like that definition because I feel like um I feel like a lot of people probably relate to that, like kind of the things you get in trouble for when you're a kid versus adult things you get in trouble for.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're very different, and sometimes the things when you're younger are like more or less innocent, from a like how you're treating other people way. Like you're not, um, killing anyone, but you're skipping class and smoking weed. It's a very different
Yeah.
type of quote unquote bad behavior. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so
Yeah.
you're at this point in the story, you're what, 17, 18?
Well, when I get there, yeah, I left the private Christian school. Again, I didn't. I was the school's first felon. I stole another student's car. He had the nicest car in the student body, so I picked his. Picked up a friend, and we were gonna head down to Hollywood and become child actors.
Oh, you really tried to steal the car, like
Oh, we stole it. I
not
stole it.
just joyriding. Like you were
No,
like,
no,
this
no.
is my car now.
Yeah, we're taking this thing.
Okay.
And uh we got as far as I don't know if you or anybody else knows where this is. We got as far as Los Banos. So we left Walnut Creek, got to Los Banos. It's about halfway there, and they got pulled over by the cops. And parents had to come and pick us up and bring us back. That was a lot of fun. And so my dad took another job in Oregon. So we moved to Oregon my junior year of high school. I thought, okay, here's a fresh start. Here's a chance to nobody knows me. I can create my own identity, you know?
Yeah.
And my dad, I mean, I love my dad. And he's been such a a great man for me the majority of my life, but he was a closet alcoholic during this season as well. So he was struggling with his own demons and secrets and stuff like that. And a lot of times some of the wounds that I personally received were from a man who happened to be, drunk. And then he ended up just a couple years after this season of quitting drinking and reaffirming and recommitting his life to Christ, and he's been that way
Oh
ever
wow.
since, for so long. But during this time, I remember it was one of those things that I don't know if I use it as an excuse, probably, but I tried. I got up to Oregon. We got into the high school, and I thought, all right, let's do it. And so I put my head down and did it. And I remember that first semester, I got like straight A's in their school. And I remember coming home thinking, all right, this is going to be cool. And I remember showing him, here it is. And he looked at it and he said, well, anybody can do it once. Let's see what you got. And I just went F you in my heart, and
Yeah.
said, I'm done. I'm not even going to try anymore. And again, probably that's all I needed was just an excuse to go back to bad behavior. Doing good
Mm.
was, I didn't see the fun of it. I played a lot of soccer. That kind of saved me from just being totally spun out, and did pretty well at that, and had opportunities to travel the nation on the Oregon State team, playing. And but instead, I took off and left school. My senior year, didn't graduate, and went down to Northern California and just chased a party down there for about a year, doing all kinds of craziness and
Hmm. Did you have friends
nonsense.
there, or like how did you decide there, to go there?
I had an aunt, my mom's sister, who lived in San Mateo, and my folks just couldn't handle me anymore. I was out of control up in Oregon. I'd take off and wouldn't come back for 4 days, and just, it was everything was just out of control. I'd cut school all the time, or I was drunk in school, or you know doing drugs or selling them, and just I was just a mess. I wasn't going to graduate anyways because I never showed up for class. And so they my dad had a conversation with me one night where he said, either you leave or I leave, but we're not both staying in this house anymore. And I was a senior, and so that's when, you know, I gotta go. So my mom called her sister, and I went down and hung out with her my wonderful Aunt Judy, until she had to kick me out about 3 months later because she couldn't handle it. She's like, "Mark, I love you, but you got to go. You're crazy." And she had two young children watching my example, and then I just started. That's when crime really started for me. That's when about a year and a half or so of criminal behavior
Mm.
became a part of my life. I just did not, again, not thinking, not caring that, oh, this is somebody else's property that I just stole, So the things that got me busted, and I had a bunch of, friends that were like-minded. We just did crazy, crazy things. And I ended up stealing a car from this poor owner in Chico, because I was staying with my brother in Chico for a little bit. Not a good place. At that time, it was Playboy magazine's #1 party school in America. Place I did not belong in Chico. Chico was too much for me. So yeah, I stole a car, went back down to San Mateo, and I kept that car for a while. Ended up ripping off a drug dealer for quite a bit of cocaine.
That sounds like a bad person to try to rip off.
Oh, dude, it was, they sent people after me to take me
Jeez.
out. I mean, they didn't find me. I drove all the way up to Oregon. I remember for years being afraid to drive through that area again,
Yeah.
just crazy. Anyways, got up to Oregon, stolen car. I dumped it somewhere, but I didn't wipe it down good enough. Um, I ended up and this is all fuzzy to me, and I don't have to go into the details because I can't remember the chronological order of my
Yeah.
jail and crime and stuff. I did enough. Suffice to say, I was in and out of county jails doing stupid things, but then I ripped off a restaurant and got busted for it. Again, I'm just cocky. It was a restaurant I worked at. The owner accused me of stealing beer or something from the cooler, and I didn't. But I was pissed off enough that I said, "Oh, you think that's bad? Now I'm going to steal your money." So I broke in and I robbed the place. Anyways, ended up getting caught for that, and that's when, that with a couple other things, I ended up getting sentenced to 3 years in the California Youth Authority because they had to extradite me. They brought me back down to California because I violated that parole of stealing that other car.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got convicted of that burglary too and violating parole, and got sentenced to the California Youth Authority for 3 years, of which I did about two. And to be clear, CYA, California Youth Authority, it's not juvenile hall. It's not the big prison, but it's like a gladiator school. I was there with, um, the armed robbers or murderers or whoever, the gangbangers from Northern and Southern California. And here's Mark. I just wanted to party.
Just chasing a thrill.
Man, chasing the thrill. And I'm like, oh, snap. Look where I'm at. I'm with like legitimate criminals who are dangerous, you know?
Yeah.
And here I am. And that was, gosh, man, that was it's still a trip to remember that was a part of my story, that I
Mm-hmm.
did that. It was 85 to 87, I think, somewhere around there.
And what were your ages during that time?
I got locked up at 18. No, 18 or 19, came out at 21.
Okay.
Came out at 21. Yeah.
Where was your relationship with Jesus like at this point? I know it, it's
Pretty much not very good.
doesn't sound like it was in a great spot, but like, did you was it just like a you had mentioned that even though you grew up in a household that was very focused on Jesus and you went to church and you enjoyed it, you didn't have bad memories of it, you did youth camp, all those things. Um, was it just kind of suppressed, or how would you describe
Mm,
that?
yeah, it's funny, Dustin, because as far back as uh 13, 14 years old, I had this knowing that I was gonna be in ministry.
Huh.
Like I felt like I remember telling a good friend of mine, a childhood friend, and this is a guy where we did a lot of stuff, not nice stuff together. And I remember telling him I'm gonna be a youth pastor one day. And I don't think there's anything I can do to stop it. Like I don't like it's my fate, and I'm not wanting to, but I think I'm going to. And it was never God that turned me off. It was the idea that he was going to take my fun away,
Mm.
you know. And so I was just getting everything I can. But now, you're locked up and you're like, yo, this is not working, bro. this
Yeah,
this
plan is
chasing
failing.
fun plan is failing. I mean, you're not that bright, Mark, but you ought to wake up to this, dude. I was in the middle of riots and all kinds of stuff that went on in there. It was a dangerous place. And in fact, it was one night when there was a riot, of which I was part of the reason this riot happened. Um, because I was a smart ass, and just would pop off at people and stuff like that. And so they decided uh, to come after me and a gang of guys. And so what they did to me and this other guy is that somewhere in the middle of the night, two guys would hold down we were in a dorm. And so there's maybe, I don't know, 50 beds in this dorm, or 30, I don't remember. Two guys would hold down your blanket, one on each side of the bed, and hold it down so you couldn't get up. And then another guy would just start beating you in the face and just beating you up. And you were not supposed to be able to get up. And so they did that. I managed to get up and fight back. But then they came in they threw in, um, uh, what are those, the bombs, smoke
like
bombs
tear gas or
and
something.
tear gas. Yeah. And we began to, I remember, running to the window to try to suck fresh air because it hurt so bad. They came in with the pepper spray too, but that didn't feel like that felt like nothing compared to this gas in the eyes. And then so it's chaos, right? And I remember this night, because this is a night where things changed with me. And I went back to the bed. They made us all get back into our beds. I had the blankets pulled up over my face, trying to get the gas away and just try to breathe through a filter. And the place was crazy. Everybody's screaming. So all these guys, I was locked up with 18 to 24-year-olds. And so they're all the tough guys. That's the age where you're trying to prove yourself and stuff. And I remember being in there right there, and all I heard was crying and screaming and loud. And then, I'm not being dramatic. It all of a sudden, at least in my head, it just got silent. And I started thinking about my youth pastor from years ago. I was thinking about my older brother who wept because he wanted to do my time for me. He was so nervous for me. I remember that love. And I said a prayer that night underneath the blanket. I said, Lord God, I'm not convinced that you're even real. But if you are, I need your help. I need you. I need you to reveal yourself. I need you. This ain't working. And then a company of angels descended into the. No, I'm kidding. Not that part.
I could tell. That's
And there
funny.
was harps and it was glorious. No, I got up the next day, thinking about getting revenge
Hmm.
on the guy who orchestrated this on me. And he ended up that day getting shipped out to either Folsom or San Quentin. He got shipped out. So he said, no, you they knew he started it or whatever else. So that was taken away from me. And I was left with just anger, you know. But I did mean that, and I started to go to chapel services and things like that. I got transferred about a week later to a fire camp up in the Tahoe National Forest, and where you fight fires. You're on a crew, and they, you know,
Huh.
you're cutting fire lines, and and I loved it.
Hmm.
And there was a dude there, Dustin. His name was Keith, and I had never met somebody like him in my life. He was raised. He was in there for Grand Theft Auto as well. I believe that's what it was. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And he was not raised in church. He had no idea about Jesus. He didn't know what Christmas or Easter was all about. He didn't know any of it. And he ran smack dab into Christ through somebody's preaching, and he gave his heart to God. And he was radically transformed. And he was one of the inmates, you know. And I remember watching him from a distance, saying, "This dude he's crazy." Not that he was weird. It was just like, is this legit? Is he really this excited about God? Because he couldn't shut up about it. And he wasn't a weirdo dude. He was a normal guy. He was a good dude, but he just was so excited about Christ. And he's telling people, he's carried his Bible around.
Hmm.
And I remember approaching him one day, telling him, say, "Hey, yeah, I know about God. I'm kind of like you, but just not like you. But I know about God. I think God is cool. God is good. So good for you." And he's like, "You don't know God." I'm like, "Oh, no, 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 no. My mom, raised us and that. And I went to church. And matter of fact, I was even in a Christian school, dude. So yeah, I do, man. Beg your pardon." And he's like, "You can't know God because you don't show it. There's no joy in your life." I was like, I wanted to punch him, but he was so
But
right.
that would have just proved his point.
Dude, I watched him for a while and until I was convinced, man, this guy's legitimate. He's got something that I don't have. He knows about God in a way I don't know, but I wanted what he had. And I approached him again another day and I said, "I want what you got, dude. But you know him in a way that I never have. But yeah, I don't know how to get it, but I want." And he goes, "Well, kneel down with me right here, right now." But we were in the middle of there was not a yard there because we were in the mountains, but in the main hangout area for everybody. I said, "Right here." He goes, "Yeah, man. Be ashamed of Christ. He's be ashamed of you." I'm like, "Dude, we could go to like there's a room around the corner over there, private." And something happened where I was like, "Screw it. I'm ready." And I did. And we nailed down right there in the dirt. And he prayed over me, and I surrendered my life to Jesus Christ that day in a very real way. And nothing's been the same since. Nothing's been the same since. That was 40 years ago. And I mean, I've had lots of ups and downs and things go on in life, but that was real. I knew joy, real joy. I remember I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave the fire camp when release date came. I didn't want to go because I'd been walking with God now for like 6 months or so, and we were seeing people give their hearts to the Lord in there.
Hmm.
And I thought, this is the best living I have ever done in my lifetime. This is the best experience of living I have ever, and I was incarcerated.
Hmm.
And it was so real that I was afraid to leave. Isn't that wild?
Why do you think you were afraid to leave?
I remember a chaplain said, if you can't serve God in here, meaning when you're in prison, you'll never be able to serve him out there. And I thought that was crazy because in here I felt like you had to play the role of somebody who's tough or this or bad or whatever else, and you can't be soft or you get taken advantage of. But he was so right because out there you've got temptations that you just don't have in here. And that's why I was afraid, because I'm going to get back out there. My last experience outside those walls, outside, in freedom, was years of not good behavior and experiences and lying and cheating and stealing and taking advantage of people and things like that. And it just scared me. In fact, when I got out, um, I was only out for a couple of months before I got scared, and I thought, I don't know that I'm going to make it. So I enrolled myself in a discipleship program home. It's called Teen Challenge. You ever heard of Teen Challenge?
No.
No, it's an awesome ministry. It's national. It's probably international. Started by uh, great great man David Wilkerson, who for his last years was at Times Square Church. I'm not sure if he's still around or not. To be honest, I said his last years. He's probably
Is he?
listening right now, saying, "I'm still alive, dude." Yeah. So phenomenal story. You ever want to read a great little book? It's called The Cross and the Switchblade, and that's the story of his ministry in New York and also the birth of Teen Challenge. So, anyways, I went into Teen Challenge because I thought I need some time to just get rooted, before I go out into that world and it doesn't seduce me, and bring me back into its clutches. So I went in the Teen Challenge. I'm still rough around the edges. Teen Challenge ended up kicking me out. I was rebuking the counselors, man. I was telling them what they're doing wrong. I was. It was funny because you fast forward a few years later, um, and the director of Teen Challenge in that area was asking me to go travel with him certain places and speak, about my time at Teen Challenge and give my testimony. I'm like, isn't this a little funny? You do remember you kicked me out, right? Aren't you a little afraid I'm going to say something?
Wow.
Yeah. So after about 7 months, because it's a year program, they asked me to leave again and it wasn't because I was doing drugs or anything like that. I was on fire. I was rebuking everybody, telling them they weren't walking with God, and the counselors and the staff and stuff like that. Bunch of hypocrites. I'm barging into meetings and board meetings and stuff saying, "You're a bunch of hypocrites. You don't love these men. You don't love these guys, man. You need Jesus in your heart." Oh, thank
Were you
God
were
for
you
the
right?
mercy. No, I was totally wrong. I was so full of myself. And and so that was that. Then I'm like, well, now what do I do? Um, well, on one occasion when we were in Teen Challenge, they took us to Sacramento. Teen Challenge was in the Mission District of San Francisco, but they took us to this conference in Sacramento. And I remember the name of the conference. It was called Run to the Battle.
Awesome name.
And isn't that a great name? Yeah. Run to the Battle. Um, it was at a church called Capital Christian Center, which became a big part of my life. Anyways, we went to the conference. I remember being at that church. I had no idea that there were buildings even like this, where it was, it housed like, I think 3,000 people. It was gorgeous. It was, full of life. Um, it was packed. I think it was a young adult or a singles conference or something like that. And I'd never experienced an atmosphere like that where people were on fire and they're worshiping. And I remember, Dustin, I remember looking down at I was up in the balcony and I'm looking down, and this is before, PowerPoint or Pro Presenter or any kind of screen digital imaging or anything like that. This was when you had the transparencies and you put them on the projector and it projected it on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this guy, and he was responsible to put the next verse or chorus onto the projector, put the transparency, take the old one off and put the new one on there. Never mind the band or the speaker or the singers or the greeters or anything. That guy right there had the job of being a part of what was going on. And I thought, if only I could do that someday. Man, he's a part of this thing. There was no thought of, I'm going to be that preacher, or I'm going to be that whatever. Just wanted to be the transparency projector guy. So
Big dreams,
that
Mark.
yeah, dream big, baby. That stuck with me, that experience. While I was there, I realized, or they had announced that they had a Bible college there. And so I ended up enrolling. And I went and and went to school there. Just like 6 months later. And so now I'm out of prison. I'm out. It's probably about a year and a half. And now I'm a student, full-time student at the school, learning theology, learning all of that. And the youth pastor asked me to be an intern. Donnie Burleson, still one of my closest friends. And I'm doing an internship at this mega church and a student. And I kept thinking, when are they going to expose me? When am I going to be exposed that I don't belong here? Do you know what I'm saying? When am I going to screw this up? That was a big fear.
Why do you
Because
think that
that's
was a
all,
fear?
because that was my childhood. That's all my life.
Mm.
You know, people gave me opportunities. I screwed them up because I'm very selfish and I live for the moment. And when I look back and think, why did I make it? I tell this too, especially if I'm speaking at a rehab or a mission or a jail or anything like that. I will tell these guys because I genuinely have thought, why did I make it? And number one, I attribute it completely, it's the grace of God. It's his strength and his magnificent hold on me, not my hold on him, but his hold on me. But also because I had friends, my kumpads, the guys and gals that I hung around with were lovers of Christ. And so it was just a part of what was normal. It became my new normal to to live on mission, to be involved, to think about God, to think about reaching people. And you do something long enough, right? It just gets wired into you. And it got what this is who I am. This is not what I'm trying to be. This is who I am. I remember it was about 2 years when I started the school there, and 2 years from when I visited that place, I actually spoke from that pulpit in that auditorium and shared testimony. And I thought, look what you've done, God. But I also thought with the other thought, when are they going to find out you don't belong here?
How long,
So,
like, it's interesting because you, like, when you tell the story, I'm sure you can, um see the dots connected, how God had his grip on you and guided you through um this season. Did you just
mhm.
have a feeling of aimlessness though? Like once you got released and you're out in the world, like what was that feeling like to be like, okay, I have to figure out what to do now? Like, did it
Mm,
feel aimless? Did it feel like you were just trying
mm.
random stuff, or did you feel a sense of direction?
Yeah, no, good question. Since uh since I since prison, when I surrendered to Christ, and again it was very real right away. It was not, he wrecked me for life without him. I was scared, but he transformed so much of my inner heart, that all I wanted to do with the rest of my life was tell people about him. So when I went to Teen Challenge, I thought I need more rootedness. I don't want to be tempted by this world out here, and so I need to be able to kind of seclude myself. A lot of the guys in Teen Challenge were trying to still get off drugs and stuff like that. That wasn't my issue. My drug was screwing up, and so I was trying to just stop that behavior. But even then, when I got out, I want to go to college. I want to learn how to be a pastor. I want to be one of those guys. I want to be in ministry for the rest of my life. I want to tell people about Jesus. So it was very, I didn't know what path it was going to take. But I knew that's where I wanted to go. And so near the end of the internship in the school, uh, I got married, and I got married real quick. I'd known my wife for, I think, probably only about 9, 10 months, and married her. And because she was a young lady who seemed to be very radical, for God, and she had, been done street ministry in Hollywood, and so I was like, okay, that's my type of person. Hey, I got an idea. Let's get married. And so we did. And then we went to Northern California, and I was took my first position as a youth pastor outside of San Jose in a place called Morgan Hill. And 9 months after we got married, we had our first son, Sam, who you know.
You know, Sam.
We did that. We had a couple of youth pastor positions, moved there, Sacramento, having really good, loving ministry, loving being a youth pastor. And then when I was 27, 28, I took my first position as a senior pastor in Northern California, Martinez, also Pleasant Hill. So we took that church over young, and got my pastor chops there. My marriage was not healthy pretty much from the beginning. And there was a time, we had, at this time when we moved from there to Hawaii, we had 3 boys at this time: Sam, Jeremiah, and Benjamin. Moved to Hawaii, and it felt like God was calling us there, and I'm pretty sure he was. And you got a question?
Yeah, why did you choose? Had you ever even been to Hawaii?
I had been over
Like that just
there.
seems
Yeah,
so random to me. Like, I
right.
mean,
Yeah. Well, try to raise support, because you're telling people that God has called you to Hawaii.
I just feel like God's calling me to some kind of long vacation. Would you guys help me pay for it?
And God bless you as you go to these other third world countries. I'm going to Maui. I had been speaking over there off and on for a couple years prior to moving over there. I was speaking at some events, and I remember and again, my marriage was, in trouble. I purposely not going to go into the details of all of this, but it was just not healthy. And I thought this, when I was over on Hawaii, one of my trips, I thought this would be a great place to raise my sons, you know, and maybe, just maybe, it would help my marriage as well, because we're on an island, can't run
Mhm.
anywhere. Let's fix this thing. Let's do this. And so we did make a move to to the Hawaiian Islands, and with some other people as well. Packed up the kids, moved over, landed in Maui. Just started ministering. My home church back in California was covering our salary at that time, and we were, the idea was going to be plant a church. And so we started doing that. We were meeting, and if anybody's been to Maui in Lahaina, right now, center, there's a huge world famous banyan tree, and then there's all kind of vendors and stuff and activity that go on there. We would bring our sound equipment, and I'd bring a keyboard. We had a lady with us who could really sing so well, and the kids would do little drama stuff, and we'd set out chairs and we'd preach the gospel underneath the banyan tree. I think it was like every Friday night.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was. That part was really cool. Um, and the kids were, getting involved in sports. At least Sam was. He was old enough to, and we were making it a home. But again, the marriage problems. There's problems going on, and then I needed more steady income. So, story short, somebody promised me a gig on Kauai, saying, "Hey, we're gonna, we want you to move over. We'll pay you this amount, and then help us grow our church, and then do whatever else you want on the side." And so I did. I moved our family over to Kauai,
And how far was that
and
from where you were at?
we are on Maui, so it's not. It's just a little jump over the pond, and we landed there, and unfortunately, this dude backed out. He was a pastor, and he backed out on what he had given his word on. And no, I'm not still bitter. And so then I'm like, I got my family here, man. What am I gonna do? And so um we started. I thought, well, what's the need here? And the need was there was no Bible training place. There was churches, but there's no training. So I started what we called all nations school of ministry. It was a 2-year program to for anybody to come in and just go through Bible studies, church history, the epistles, last day, just teaching them some of the same stuff I'd learned. And it was a real success. And then I would travel and preach on Sundays a lot of times, just for to make rounds and bless people and also earn an income. So we had, over the next couple of years, we had over 450 students.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
it
didn't
was
realize
it
that you
was
gotten that
yep.
much
Not at
success
one
there.
time, but that many over
Yeah,
the
but
over.
that's a lot of people to put through though.
Yep. And yeah, it was awesome. The part ministry, that was awesome. But again, marriage problems, and then counselors weren't working for various reasons. And I don't know if I should have done it or done it, but we were offered a position to pastor a church there on Kauai, and we accepted and got voted in. And again, ministry wise, off the charts. Within about a year and a half, that church went from 200 people to 1,000.
Wow.
And on Kauai, that was the biggest thing that existed. And we were doing radio, and we had TV, our service on TV, and it was glorious. And had vision to plant all over the island. Uh, I'm at this point the took over as the one of the superintendents for our denomination across the state of Hawaii. So I'm doing that. I'm helping to run the pastors association on Kauai. We got a church that continues to grow and is making a difference. And I'm like, this is great. Except that's not the whole story. This is when the marriage finally came to an end, and I did not want it to. I wanted us to get fixed. Um, I, I don't. This is my mother's. I mean, my son's mom, um, who I loved and who I still love and want nothing but the best. But it didn't. I'm going to stay vague on this. I told you,
Yeah, that's okay.
you know. But there was. I mean, there was no infidelity or abuse. There was nothing tabloidish about what happened. It's just it didn't work. And we ended up in a divorce, and that's painful for everybody, as you know. Kids, all of us. And so right here, Dustin, is where everything that had been built, you know it crashed.
Mm.
It crashed. And it wasn't, again, it was not something to point to say, well, we need you to step down because you did this or that happened. It's, you can't be divorced in this particular denomination, regardless of fault or reasons or anything. You cannot have a
Interesting.
divorce.
How
But yeah.
common is that? I don't really know. Like, I've pretty much been a part of non-denominational churches since, I mean, with little bits here and there, a year here, a year there, and other ones, but I don't really know
Yeah.
how that functions. Is that pretty common for some denominations?
I think it's less common now, but it was and still is in certain denominations. I know I was a part of the Assemblies of God for a while in my younger days, and yeah, they're same thing. They have all these. It's kind of like well, we can get an ecclesiastical annulment and go through this process and whatever. I'm sure there's that stuff works in some cases, but that's the running joke with some of these denominations is that you can commit murder, but you can't have divorce. So kill your spouse, but don't divorce them. And there's a place for you. No,
Yeah,
I'm obviously being
no,
facetious.
I know, it's I won't spend too much time on this, but just it does seem kind of odd. To boot you out of your pastoral duties for a divorce you weren't even hoping to have.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I think the whole thing could have went differently, but it didn't. And then I find myself, and again, it's sad because the church obviously suffered. I mean, it just was bad all the way around. It was sad, and I found myself raising my sons, uh, and still just trying to cope with my own loss and what had happened. And then we, planted another church and was doing missions work and just staying afloat doing things, but it wasn't the same. I wanted to leave the island because you can easily go from hero to whore, real quick in life. And I had a lot of favor there,
Mm,
and then it went south, and and then I didn't handle my life well after that. I went south personally
mm,
into things, and uh just whatever, just hurting
yeah,
and
yeah,
handling that in
trying,
unproductive ways.
yeah,
So and yet still trying to be faithful and still trying to honor God, and yet also going back to some past behaviors, not criminal behaviors, but
yeah,
self-medicating
yeah,
and just and yet still trying to pastor,
yeah,
and do this. And it's like it was just, and I would have left, but I knew my sons, this was their home, this is their friends. They had already seen their parents separate. Now to separate them from the
yeah.
life that's pretty much the only life they knew was, the
How
ocean and the jungle.
how long had you been on Hawaii at this point?
At that point, probably 10 to 10 years or so.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, they in a lot of sense, like your kids grew up there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then yeah, they grew up there. One of them's still there, you know. And so that's home. That's home for them. And in a lot of ways it feels like still home for me because it's where you raised your children.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, yeah, beautiful, beautiful people. And it's really hard for me sometimes when I go back because of just the memories and some of the heartache and the pain.
Yeah,
But I love that island. I love the Hawaiian culture, just the local culture. I like how they do life, the sense of ohana, the family. We were greatly loved and cared for. And so no regrets at all. I am so glad that I raised my kids in that space on Kauai. So glad, no regrets in that at all. Plenty of regrets for other things. I always laugh when people say they have no regrets, and they're like, "No, I have no regrets because then I wouldn't be the person I am today." I'm like, "Oh man, what would that be like?" I certainly have regrets, man. I don't. I feel
like
horrible about some of the things I've done in my life. I'm glad God redeemed it. I love the word redemption. He makes all things new, but are you kidding me?
so okay
So
at this point, I'm just trying to keep track in my mind for like your arc here. How old are you at this point?
40,
Okay, like somewhere around there.
42, early 40s.
Okay.
Yeah, at a time when I had it seemed like, man, I've reached it where I want to go. We're doing it, and it's successful and in all the right areas. It seemed like it, except for this one huge area, which is the most important area. It wasn't, and it crumbled in 30 days. I mean, it took
Oh
a lot
yeah,
more. There was a lot of things leading up to it, but and I
yeah.
was begging for help. I was begging for help, and there's a lot of people trying to help, really, but everybody's got choices. And so then I'm without that, and I'm, I just what I just shared, I'm having a hard time, but I'm still trying to do it. Um, and a few years pass, and that's when another thing happened that changed my life, and that's when I met Mary Nell, who you know.
Oh, Mary.
Yes, Mary.
She's the greatest.
Yes, she is.
It's just such a sweet relationship, the way that you guys are toward each other. It's funnier now hearing all of um your childhood and your rough around the edges parts of Mark, and then how you are toward Marianelle and how she is towards you. She just
Mm.
totally softens you up.
Oh, no argument. No argument. She is yeah. Jesus saved my soul. She she was used by him to save a lot of it too. And I remember when I was pastoring our main church there in Kapaa, Mary Nell attended it. I didn't know her. We had a large congregation. I didn't, but I she was one of our greeters, and I remember her doing that so well. I remember telling people, say, you train your greeters like that lady out there who does it, and described her to them, but I didn't know her. So then you fast forward 3 years, go through all this, the divorce happens. We planted another church, and she shows up, and I just remembered her from seeing her when, years ago. She showed up, and long story short, I did eventually, because I thought, I'm fine. I am not looking to date or get married or do anything. I've got my kids, my sons with me, raising them, and I'm doing that. And then when they get older, I'm out of here probably. And I'm not planning on ever getting married. And then, but there was something about her. She's a beautiful human being. She is a wonderful human being, and a beautiful lady all around in every area. But such a contagious spirit, such a warm, loving spirit, and that's attractive. And so, as she was a part of our church, I got to know her some. I thought, oh, good night. I need to ask her out. And I was so
Oh,
scared,
because that's so awkward. The pastor
dude,
asking you on the date. What do you say?
dude.
How do you say no to that?
Oh, and then you do
Or
say
yes.
no, and then you never want. That was my fear. Is like,
Yeah.
I am gonna put this woman in trauma. Her pastor asks her out,
Okay, wait. I
so
want to.
she'll
I
say,
want to. I want to hear a little bit of that, because how you approached that, I assume, has to be very careful and thought out. Um, so tell me that story. How did that go about?
All right, try to be quick, but I she was out of work. She worked for the Marriott, but she had surgery on her foot, and so she was out of work for a couple months. And she'd expressed interest in just helping out around the church. If there's anything that needed help while she was out, and so I set up an appointment where we were meeting at a church. It was at this kind of restaurant, hotel place, and I set up a meeting for her to come in and discuss what areas that she might be able to help out in. Knowing in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to ask her out to coffee or something. So we have this meeting, and we're talking and hearing her story and stuff, and areas of the church that she might be interested in helping out in. And I couldn't get myself to do it. I kept thinking, number one, she's a beautiful woman too. And so I'm like, she's way out of my league, which she is and still is. And so I thought, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to freak her out. She'll say either yes out of pity, or she'll say I'm sorry, and she will run away from us as a church as far as she can get. So the appointment comes to an end, and she says goodbye, and I say goodbye, and she gets in her car and drives home. And I'm like, you sissy. I'm telling myself, you weak man, you. And so as I was in the middle of shaming myself for my lack of spine, I called her back up and said, "Oh, Mary Nell, hey, there was something else about our talk that I forgot to bring up." She goes, "Oh, do you want to talk about it now?" Like on the phone, I go, "Oh, it really needs to be in person. Would you mind coming back down?" What a bonehead. What a bonehead. And she came back down. She told me later that she thought this is what was going on, which is only one reason he's asking me back down there.
It's
And
like offering the stick of gum. You know what's coming.
it's happening. She knew. So I finally got the courage and asked her, "Would you like to I don't even remember. Coffee, dinner, a glass of wine. I don't remember, but asked her, and she said yes. Hot diggity dog.
You did it.
Yeah. I told her, I said, well, you said yes because you'd been stalking me those last 3 years, probably trying to find a time, huh? No, no, you can't imagine. No way. So, dude, um, we dated though, because I was still scared, for probably
Yeah.
almost 3 years, 3 more years, 2.5, 3 years. Then I proposed and we got married after that. And that was over 10 years ago. And that's been, that's been a life changer. I am
Mm-hmm.
I'm head over heels, still in love with Mary now. And so God has used her in so many great ways. And now she's with me as we're pastoring this church in Venice. And I'm very blessed. I'm very blessed to see his hand at work again. And this time I'm doing it with her,
Yeah.
and we're seeing things happen here that are so fun and so godly and so rich. Venice Beach is so rich in flavor and eccentricities and people, and our particular congregation here is so it's such a variety, such a buffet of
Mm-hmm.
different people, and so many young adults and others, and so we get to do it together. And I'm watching, you know I think that, I was, when I guess the message, I mean, there's a couple things, but the thing that when I look at my life, and there's parts, that I certainly didn't cover, but when I look at my life in the roller coaster that it's been, of real highs and real lows, and all over the map on behavior and relationships and experiences and all of it, I am fascinated. I wish there was a strong enough word. I'm stunned and so grateful. This grip of love that God has had on my life, all my life. There's a scripture that says, even when we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. And even when I wasn't walking with him and I was, you know, messing things up and hurting myself and hurting people and my choices and my actions and my behaviors, I was still an image bearer. I was still that kid in junior high who was weeping at that altar. I was still of worth and of value, even though I couldn't see it in myself, but he sees it. And he held me and protected me and guided me. And then through highs and then through lows, even in ministry, He is such an ultimate redeemer that if we will lean into him, and I certainly didn't do that right so many times, but if we will lean into him, there's nothing that can snatch us out of his hand, out of his grip of love, out of his plans for us. Nothing. There's nothing that this world can bring us or that man can do to us that will thwart the intentions of God for our lives. If we will surrender, if we'll trust him, if we'll be with him, we can either go the hard way and the long way or the short way. But he is so faithful and so good, so good, so good. I feel so undeserving, but you know what? The best human being out there, you're undeserving as well. We're all so undeserving. Let's just get it straight. We have one hero of the story, and it's Jesus. And man, let's be good with that. And let's share his glory. Let's share his story. Let's share his mission. Let's brag about him and sing his praises and preach his praises and make him the center, and then like this whole podcast, this whole ministry that we've started, let's make sure that we are attempting by his grace to live this out as his body to everyone, because everyone belongs. They just don't know it. But everyone is an imago Dei, is an image bearer. And there's, people like me in my late teens that, you just would chalk off as what a screw up, good riddance, lock them up, and yet he sees a lost son, and to be honest, there was people like this chaplain who would come and visit us at the fire camp, who loved on me and Keith, the guy who led me to the Lord, and discipled us and others along the way. So let's be that. One plants, one waters, God gives the increase. We don't need to see the increase. We may not. We keep our eyes fixed on Jesus and do it because he's worthy. Yep.
Yeah.
So there you have it.
That's good. Real quick, because I don't want to skip over this other season of your life, because I know people from Venice Church are probably listening to this and are curious of this one part. What was the path to Venice Church?
I had tried to make things continue to happen on Kauai. It was getting harder and harder. She was working, but her I think Marinelle has rheumatoid arthritis, and so it was getting increasingly difficult for her to do her job at the Marriott, and so I went. I thought, you know what, I got to get back to the mainland, where I know people and I know things, and plant a church, because my headspace was in a much better place, and I'm like, let's do this. And I tried doing that in Oregon, and thought it was going to happen, but it ended up not working. I went back to Kauai and was just I was painting, and then still preaching when I could, but just working, trying to get an income. And I was really concerned because I thought I need to take over as the main breadwinner here, because my wife can't keep doing this. And I longed to be back in full-time ministry. And then Mike Meeks, who was the pastor at Eastlake Church down in Chula Vista, Southern Cal, the San Diego area, called, because I had reached out to him and say, hey, keep your ears open, and he told me about a church they were kind of taking over, that had fallen on hard times, and so they were going to take it over, and we needed to kind of replant a church there, and it was in San Gabriel Valley of Los Angeles County. And he asked me if I was interested, and I was like, yeah, because number one, I really held Mike in high esteem. He had been really good for me and a good example, and I liked the Eastlake Church model and how they went about ministry. I was like, oh, I dig these guys. They are sincere lovers of Jesus, and just minus any of the stupid stuff, Yeah, because I was worn out with just the stupid stuff of church life. Like, I'm done. I'd rather sell cars and just love on people than be a part of. the stupid stuff. So anyway, I said, yeah, dude, I really would. And so long story short, we went over there in San Gabriel Valley. Things changed. It didn't happen there. They had a change of plans, and then they asked me, would you like to stay with us, come on staff here, at Eastlake? I was like, 100%.
You know what, Mark? Do you remember that we first met at that church campus in San Gabriel? Do you remember that?
We did. Oh, you
Uh-huh.
came over with Chris.
Uh-huh. Yeah, when Chris Dukas was pastor of Venice,
Oh,
I got he good old Chris. He one day he like texted me at like 1 p.m. in the afternoon. He was like, "Hey, would you come over and help me with something at the church?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll come over." And I went over there, and then he was like, "All right, get in the van." And I was like, "All right, where are we going?" And then he didn't tell me that all day we were gonna go be moving things around and like loading, unloading stuff at that church. And
an
then
hour and a half away.
and then you were there doing something, and then I didn't know that I
Ah,
would know you for
yeah.
ever after that, but yeah.
I forgot about that. I forgot about that. Yeah. So they asked me, they said, hey, we'd like to send you up to Venice to just help with the ministry up there. And Chris, as you mentioned, was the pastor here at the time, is only about a year old. And so I did and moved up here. And then Chris ended up getting offered a position back down in Chula Vista at the main campus, the mothership. And then they asked me if I would like to take over as the pastor here. That was 7 years ago or so. And so we did, and have been here ever since, and love these people. Love these people. And still love being a part of, it's no longer called the Eastlake Network, but the community church movement. And because they're a great group of men and women who are passionate about Jesus, minus the BS. So that's my kind of place.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all that. Yeah, that was cool to hear all that. I mean, I thought maybe I knew 50%. I think I knew about 10%. So uh yeah, it's cool though, just seeing God, how he imprinted on your life in different seasons, and lassoed you through different parts of it to pull
Yeah,
you back toward him. And obviously it's evident now, the grip he's got on you, and I'm thankful for you and thankful for how you've just mentored me throughout our relationship and continue to do that. So I'm glad he had a grip on you.
me too. Thanks, Dustin.
Thanks for listening to Everyone Should Know. At Everyone, we believe what the Bible says in Genesis 1, that God created humanity in his image and likeness, which means we are all Imago Dei, image bearers of God. Our mission as a nonprofit organization is to see everyone valued, reached, encouraged, and integrated into community, because we believe everyone matters. To learn more about how we're working to accomplish that mission and to join the movement, go to everyonemovement.com. That's everyonemovement.com.